There's a type of person that I really do not like among the many types of people that I really do not like, which is the person that sees reading as though it is like working out, some sort of health activity that you ought to force yourself to do as a form of self-improvement. Now, I'm not here to deny the cognitive benefits of reading. Those have been well demonstrated over the years. The fact that reading improves one's imagination, empathy, critical thinking skills, at least reading actively improves one's critical thinking skills. And if you read in a manner where you actually preserve the knowledge gathered from a book, then it can improve your knowledge as well. All of this is well known. There appear to be like cognitive benefits in terms of the actual like structure physically of your brain as well. So there are multiple things that reading does that other forms of media do not do. But that does not mean you should force yourself to read if you don't like to read. It may mean that it is worth learning how to enjoy reading, which I think is totally possible. You know, there are plenty of people who go through school and they have the idea in their head that they don't like to read simply because the material that they were given in school was not interesting for them, or because they associate the act of reading with having to recall all the characters, recall all the events of the story, analyze specific themes. And doing all this kind of takes away the magic of reading because it creates this pressure on you to have to know all this stuff in order to be graded for your class rather than just enjoy the process of reading and then take in the information as it comes. I found that when I read on my own growing up, I actually could tell you a lot more about the books I was reading rather than when I was in a classroom setting and there was this pressure on me by the teacher. And I say this as a student that likes to read, a student that chose to do so outside of school. It was a very bizarre situation for me because even though I could tell you a lot about the book, even though I understood a lot of what the book was doing, my test-taking anxiety would kick in at the moment that I was supposed to tell you about all those things, and then I would end up getting answers wrong that I actually knew the correct response to. Getting questions wrong, excuse me. But it's a very bizarre situation. And so I think that school creates this environment that is not conducive to a love of reading. They don't facilitate a love of reading in their students, which is very sad because I think it is truly a wonderful hobby, and it's one that I value quite a lot, one that I would say is fundamental to my identity, even though I don't talk about it very much on this channel, because I don't want to be one of those people that comes on here and says, oh, look at this book I'm reading this, I'm reading that, oh, look at me, blah, blah, blah. I don't like those kinds of people. I mean, you see it on social media all the time now. People who just can't shut up about how many books they have, how many books they've read, and it's like, are you even reading these things? I have to wonder that at times, the social media readers, the people that are taking every moment they can to post their new books on Twitter, to post themselves reading a book on Discord, to share every new addition to their shelf. It's like, are you actually reading this? If you're able to participate in meaningful discussion of a book you're reading, okay, that's one thing. I've done that before as well. But this like obsession with appearing as though you're some sort of intellectual just because you read books, it is literally the most sued thing ever. We know about the benefits of reading. That doesn't make you a better person, right? It doesn't make you necessarily even a smarter person than a lot of other people. That is demonstrated in other ways. But there's like this weird social thing going on here where people feel as though they need to project in identity of being a reader, of being this modern intellectual, of having this aesthetic of some sort of modern intellectual, and that somehow makes them better than other people. It doesn't make you better than other people. It doesn't even necessarily make you smarter than other people, because that's ultimately going to be measured in various ways. And just because you read doesn't prove that. It has to be proven in situations where your intelligence is actually put to test. Whatever the hell that means in the first place, you know? Ultimately, there are multiple ways of measuring intelligence, and neither is inherently better than the other. Ultimately, those ways of measuring intelligence measure how well you might do in a certain situation. And so, on some level, it's all relative. At the very least, these tests and our ways of talking about these things are filtered through the subjective perspective of humans. One where we often like to think we are correct about a great many things, but often we are not, and our perception is limited because the tools that we use to determine the validity of various claims, even to look at our own brains, are limited. And so our perception is limited. Our ability to access knowledge and truth is limited, which is not to say I'm going full relativist here. You know, I think empirical methods of observation and verifying claims are important, but there is much improvement to be done. And so even the ways by which we derive these conclusions of is this person intelligent or is this person not are flawed, right? And so like this weird obsession that people have with like, oh, I want to be smart, I want to be this, I want to be that, it's very bizarre. Just be a person, you know, just be yourself at the end of the day. I don't understand why people feel like they need to be something over somebody else. They need to be something better than somebody else. And why they have to like grab onto these signifiers in order to prove that, in order to project that to the world. Ultimately, I think it's insecurity, or you know, certain things that the society they come from have valued, or you know, a desire to be different, perhaps. There could be all sorts of things going on there, but they read to me as very silly. I have trouble I have trouble empathizing with it at this point in my life. I think there was a time when I wanted to be seen as such, you know, when I wanted to be seen, perhaps not to the same extent as these people, but you know, similarly. And this is something that ultimately all of us go through, right? The desire to be seen by others a certain way, you know, to have our perceptions of ourselves affirmed, or to have these traits that are considered positive by society apply to us. But that's all they are, right? These are values that are created by society, that are perceived by society, but they're not actually an objective measurement of value, you know? And the ways that we see ourselves as well. It is similarly skewed and inaccurate. Today, I either see myself there you go. I see myself as either below average or at average, you know, in terms of quote unquote intelligence, whatever that means. But I'm fine with that because I'm capable of realizing the projects that I'm interested in that bring me joy, and ultimately that's all I've ever wanted to do. In the past, I didn't think I could do that. In the present, I've realized that I can because I've actually done it and continue to do so. And so all of these interpretations of what is or what is not an intelligent person ultimately don't matter to me because I'm doing my own thing, and I would rather continue to focus on that than throw my hat into this bizarre rat race, this competition to determine who is more of what is essentially a pretend thing, you know, who is more of this imaginary thing that we've decided that some people are and others aren't. I don't want to be a part of that. But because I have this, I wouldn't call it disdain, I would call it more of a critique of this worldview, right? This conception of intelligence, of smarts, if you will. Because I have this critique of that whole world, let's say, I find these people very annoying. These people that view reading books as some kind of self-improvement activity, like working out, these people that force themselves to read even when they don't want to, even when they clearly don't like the act of doing it, just stop. Just stop. Just focus on living your life and doing the things that are really enjoyable to you. You know, that isn't to say that there aren't people who can benefit from perhaps teaching themselves, you know, to enjoy the act of reading by searching through and looking for books that they actually do enjoy, that actually do entice them enough to make them continue reading naturally. You know, it isn't to say that cultivating the habit of reading, like starting 15 minutes a day and then continuing from there, isn't a positive thing to do. That maybe requires a little bit of effort at first, right? You know, I'm not going against any effort whatsoever because ultimately, you know, it is a medium that will require a little bit more effort than others. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you are someone that absolutely detests the act of reading, no matter what you're reading, no matter how tailored it is to your individual taste, no matter how much you've looked, if you just can't do it without feeling like there's something wrong, without feeling like this is just not for you, just don't do it. It's that simple. But there are countless people who, because they have this notion of what reading is in their head, that it's this self-improvement activity that they ought to force themselves to do as a form of punishment or self-discipline or whatever, that they continue to do it nonetheless. Because there are people like this out there, I feel as though I have to say something. Because they're just making themselves suffer for no reason. Maybe you'll get some of the benefits I'm talking about, but it's like, maybe you could get other benefits from doing other things. Maybe you really enjoy, I don't know, working on electronics, right? Maybe you don't like reading, but you like to fix things. I don't know. That's probably pretty good for the brain as well. I haven't done research on if it is or not, but I would imagine so, because there's a lot to remember, and you have to, to tinker with small parts and stuff. You need hand-eye coordination and to follow instructions. And sometimes to come up with unique solutions if something goes wrong along the process. So I don't know. These people are very bizarre to me. Really, just that whole world of like, how much social capital do I have? How do I look? Who am I? How do others see me? I don't want any part of that. I actively do my best to go against that by embarrassing myself on the internet, by being vulnerable and making myself look bad, by telling all of my worst stories and talking about all the times I've messed up, and admitting even to the times when I tried to make myself look better than I actually was. I do all of this on the internet not as some bizarre humiliation ritual, but rather to demonstrate that people are just people, that people are imperfect, and so am I, especially me, given the amount of bizarre and embarrassing stories I've told over the years. But it's also true that many, many people have just as many, if not more than me, and that's okay. We don't need to be these perfect versions of ourselves that the algorithm pushes us to present. We're not North Korean citizens, right? In North Korea, when the cameras are on, they feel the need to look as happy as possible because they don't know what's going to happen at the party meeting in a week from now, when they have to give their reverences to the great leader. But we don't have to do that. We're not compelled legally to do anything like that. And yet, people, because maybe being a social animal, because maybe the way in which social media takes advantage of our biology, of our desire to be perceived a certain way by the rest of society, and also the unrealistic way that it makes us perceive those other people, because they're lying as well. It creates this expectation that we need to show only the good parts of ourselves, otherwise something bad's going to happen. Otherwise, our life is going to be bad. And my life is great. I come on here and I talk about the most embarrassing things. And my life is wonderful. I think I would be significantly less happy if I felt the need to come on here and present myself as some sort of rogue intellectual that just reads 24/7 and that, I've got all the male makeup on and works out 4 hours a day or something. I don't even know. It's very bizarre. Like, I don't put these segments in my videos where I'm lifting weights or where I'm running or something. Those are things that I do, but I'm not coming on here talking about it all the time. I do those things, just enough to have a good level of activity, because you don't want to be sitting around all the time. But, there are others that sort of feel the need to do it primarily to make other people see them a certain way. And if you want to think of it from a utilitarian perspective, okay, if that leads to the outcome of you doing the thing more, maybe that's good. Okay, now you're healthier. That's objectively a good thing. But what about the way you got there and the impact that might be having on your mental state? Ultimately, to have a healthy mind in addition to a healthy body and all these other things, you have to have the right reasons for doing things. If you're bodybuilding and the like, to see yourself in a better light, because it's a goal you sincerely have, it's something you sincerely want to do. That's probably better, Ultimately, this obsession with appearing a certain way in front of the rest of people can have tangible positive benefits, but the drawbacks are very apparent as well. Because in making yourself do things merely for the rest of people, the rest of society, you are losing track of the things that are important to you and what your own goals might be. And I think that self-knowledge is much more important, to be self-directed and directed towards what you want is more important. I don't understand all this. Don't sit there and force yourself to read stuff that you're not actually interested in, or that you don't actually want to read, or that you're only reading in order to appear a certain way in front of everybody else. It doesn't make you an intellectual giant. It doesn't make you an interesting or better person. It just makes you somebody who is more compelled than some other people to appear a certain way in front of everyone else. It makes you somebody who is more controlled by other people, because ultimately that's what it is. These incentives that we have to appear a certain way in front of other people are nothing more than an incentive that is created by society, that propels certain individuals in society to behave in a manner that that conforms to the expectations therein.